We will now kick off the first session of the conference, Trump Team and Policies Towards the Korean Peninsula, which will be chaired by Prof. Schipke. Prof. Schipke, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you again to our previous speakers for, I think, setting the stage. Thank you very much for our discussions. I'm very happy to start the first panel. We have a fantastic lineup of 3 speakers. One of them will join us virtually. The topic is Trump Team and Policies Toward the Korean Peninsula. I think this theme will go throughout the entire event today in one way or another. What I'll do is you all have the CVs in front of you, so I will just mention the speakers by name. We have Professor Hahnkyu Park, who is Dean and Professor at the Kyung University. Then we have Professor Vitaly Kozyrev, who's Professor of Political Science and International Studies at Endicott College. And then we have Dr. Victor Cha online, as I indicated, who is a Distinguished University Professor at Georgetown University. What we'll do is I will ask each of the panelists to come to the podium, give a short 15-minute kind of presentation, and then we'll all get together for the Q&A session. So maybe with that, I could invite Professor Hahnkyu Park to kick off the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Hahnkyu Park from Kyung University. Even though I have to finish my presentation in 15 minutes, but as a co-organizer, I have to express my special thanks to several people here. First of all, my special thanks goes to the director Schipke of this East Asian Institute, who provide us a generous support for this conference. And then I also express my gratitude to my colleagues and friends, Dr. Lampinger, who organized this conference in such a wonderful way. So when I look at the list of participants, I was quite surprised. Okay, how he was possible to gather the very important and the influential, the scholars and experts. Okay, thank you very much, Pinger. Lastly, I also want to express my gratitude to those who worked very hard to organize this conference. My friend here again, the Mr. James Tan. Where is he? Okay, and other, admin staffs. Okay, in EAI. Thank you very much again. Okay, let me get back my business. Okay, so okay, I will address some prospects for RK-US relations. Okay, under the second term Trump administration, from the perspectives of South Korea. But I will address this the topics. Okay, first of all, okay, Trump's China policy and its impact on South Korea, and secondly, Trump's policy toward South Korea and its impact on security relations between 2 countries, and Trump North Korea policy, its impacts on RK-US relations, inter-Korean relations, And also lastly, okay, the Trump, the impacts of the Trump, policy, East Asian policy on U.S., Japan, South Korea, trilateral security cooperation. This might be the topic of the Haruka-san, right? Okay, I mean, very briefly touch upon this issue. Okay. As you can see here, too many words on my slides. Don't be worried. I will summarize and notice the key points, okay, for each topic. First of all, actually, I cannot see my slides from here clearly. Anyway, can I move on to this? Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Let me take a sec so I can see on my screen. Okay, thank you. Okay, first of all, the main theme of, terms, first, America First policy, is that gives priority American national interest, over global commitments and international cooperation. The Trump foreign policy will be kind of the unilateral diplomatic approach to, achieve the American national interest, over, the international cooperation, as you know that, right? So let me explain the key characteristics of the Trump's American First policies. First of all, as you know, Trump's foreign policy is often characterized by his transactional, the style of diplomacy. Again, that maximize U.S. economic benefits and minimize the military costs. Okay, so I think the Trump's, American First policy will give the priority to checking on China in the Indo-Pacific region, because Trump has already, mentioned the many times that China is the greatest, threat to United States. Okay, due to a combination of the economic, security, and geopolitical factors. For example, exploiting Chinese economy's predatory economy, exploiting the free trade, destroying hundreds of thousands of jobs in the United States, stealing U.S. intellectual property, blah, blah, like that, okay? And then secondly, Trump is quite, concerned about, the cost the United States pay to its, allies, allied countries like NATO, South Korea, Japan. So, the Trump has, since his first, term, he continuously demanded that his U.S. allies should increase their defense spending, military cost sharing, okay, of the U.S. troops in their service. Okay. So lastly, Trump believes that tariff is the wonderful tool in U.S. foreign policies, right? In terms of the, in terms of the revenue generation, tariff balance, leverage in negotiation, and the national security and the domestic manufacturing, boost like that. Okay, so okay, the Trump's China policy as top priority in the Trump's foreign policy and its impact on South Korea. Okay, as you can see here, okay, there are several aspects of the Trump's, China policy. First of all, economic decoupling. I don't want to, delve into details of this, each, the policy contents, but as the Trump during his first term, tried to decouple the United States, the industries, okay, and other global value chain from China, right? Decoupling. Decoupling is the main theme of his, the China policy. Secondly, the Indo-Pacific strategy, okay? So, this U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy was, developed and during the terms of first term, right? So, the main goal of this U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy is broadly check the China rising influence, China's rising influence in the Pacific region. I think this Indo-Pacific strategy will continue during his second term. Okay, so so I think with this, the Indo-Pacific, U.S. Indo-Pacific, I mean Trump's Indo-Pacific strategy might, put Seoul again in a difficult position to navigate the complexity of its relations with China, okay, in the future. China is the largest trading partner to South Korea. Okay. Okay. And, lastly, the potential shifts in U.S. military focus from Korean Peninsula to, broader, Indo-Pacific concerns and Trump's direct engagement in the nuclear deal with Kim Jong-un, okay, possibly made an important shift. Made important shifts in RQ-US alliance, such as the reducing or the downdrawing of your troops in South Korea. Okay. Okay. This is the impact of the Trump's China policy on South Korea. Okay. There were the things, okay, with regard to the Trump's China policies, okay, as related to South Korea. Well, let me explain this, impacts of the Trump's China policy on South Korea. Okay, first of all, and the Trump's China policy is mainly, aimed to broadly check the China in the Pacific region, could pressure South Korea into align more closely with the United States strategic goals. Okay, and this training is balanced act between the economic ties with China and security reliance on the United States in a difficult position to manage, okay, its relations with both the United States and the China, okay, when the Trump, they pushes South Korea to align more closely with the United States. Okay, if Seoul refused to accept the Trump's demands, such as the more active participation in U.S. Indo-Pacific, the framework, and increased defense burden sharing, the Trump might reduce U.S. forces Korea that could significantly challenge Korea's security framework. Secondly, okay, the Ambassador Hong already talked about, the domestic political crisis in Korea is, effects on the Korean foreign policy. But, I also think the domestic political instability in South Korea now, okay, could complicate alliance dynamics with the Trump administration. Okay. Should Korean progressive with, Korean progressives, Korean conservatives, they have very diverging different policy agendas, preferences with regard to foreign policies. For example, Korean conservatives, they have the tendency to, support for the RQ-US alliance, okay, and and also, they regard the North Korea as kind of an enemy to South Korea like that. On the other hand, Korean progressives, okay, they also have the tendency that, they support to improving relations and, strengthening relations with China as kind of the leverage to, to reduce Korea's reliance on United States. And they also have kind of the pro-Korean, stance because they believe that North Korea, just 5 minutes. Okay, sorry, okay. North Korea just, the legitimate counterpart for the peaceful unification, as you can see here, okay. So, but, I think at this point is very important to me. If, Korean Progressive would win the next presidential election, who has pro-China or pro-Korean, the policy preferences, okay, if they may create some kind of tensions, some frictions with Donald Trump administration. Okay, this tension might provide the potential to generate significant tension and friction in the U.S.-South Korean relations, and then, maybe Trump bypass South Korea, okay, in dealing with North Korea, okay, and also, Korea might be, isolated, okay, from the U.S. efforts, okay, in Indo-Pacific, U.S. strategy in Indo-Pacific region like that, okay. Okay, let me skip this last one. Okay. Economically, economic is not my domain of research, so let me skip this part. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. And then, I think of some strategy. Okay, the South Korea strategy in the middle of the strategic competition between U.S. and China, but is still in developing process. Okay, I will. Develop this strategy. I think of more detail. Okay, when I write the full paper later. Okay, sorry. Okay, like this. Okay, it's kind of very primitive idea on the South Korea strategy, how to cope with the strategic competition. Okay, between the U.S. and China. Okay, let me skip it. Okay, let me talk about the Trump's policy toward the South Korea in terms of the security. Okay, first of all, as you know, the Trump administration, the President Trump, okay, has continuous demand that South Korea should pay more for the cost of the U.S. troops in Korea. Okay, so he said that Korea is a rich country. He once called South Korea money machine. Okay, so he raised the bet. Okay, the South Korea should pay the $10 billion annually for defense cost sharing. Okay, during his first term, Trump also demanded that South Korea should increase its military cost sharing from $1 billion to $5 billion like that. Okay, so when former President Moon refused to accept the Trump's demands, okay, Trump later said he really don't like dealing with Moon Jae-in. Okay, and he also said it just a quote from the the memoir, okay, written by the John Burton, who was the security advisor to the first term Trump. He also said that okay, the Koreans were terrible people. He didn't know why U.S. had been protecting them all the years. They don't pay us, let's get out there. That's what he actually said. Okay. It was quoted by the John Bolton. Okay, so so it seems to me Trump basically has the personal belief that Korea is free rider on the alliance. Okay, taking advantage of the American benevolence, which I don't agree with. Okay. Oh my, I still have many contents. Okay. And then, Trump might, sorry to say, too much time, it's likely, maybe it's gonna, okay, because, still Trump policy towards the Korean Peninsula remain uncertain. Okay. So I have to say, I have to predict what will happen. Okay. So you guys prove me how much my prediction uh, will be wrong, okay? So prediction, scholar, predict, okay? Because they prove to be wrong. Sorry, Anyway, okay. Trump, don't like, the stationing U.S. troops in South Korea because, it costs a lot of money. So, during his 2016 campaign, he expressed dissatisfaction with out-of-U.S. alliance. So he said that, the American troops might be drastically reduced or withdrawn from Korea if his demands increase, the defense cost sharing, okay, were not met, okay. He actually ordered the Pentagon in 2018 to prepare action for downdrawing, okay, the troops in Korea. In post Singapore summit press conference, Trump even expressed personal desire to withdraw U.S. from South Korea, which shocked me at the time, like that. Okay. So I think if Trump's demands were not met, okay, there's possibility that Trump will try to attempt to reduce, or if not, withdraw the certain level of the U.S. troops in South Korea, which will be has the potential to destabilize, okay, the geopolitical dynamics on the Korean Peninsula and may weaken the Korean security. Okay, joint military exercise. Okay, so Trump also, try to, Trump actually suspend the out-of-U.S. joint military exercises after the Singapore summit between Kim Jong-un and with Kim Jong-un. Okay, by saying that, okay, joint military exercise should be suspended. Okay, for the further the nuclear negotiations with Kim Jong-un, and he also said joint military exercise is too expensive. Okay, South Korea should pay the cost, but they don't pay. Okay, so it's too expensive. It must be stopped. Okay. How many times I have? 1 minute. Okay. Okay. Okay, I will finish in. I will finish in 1 minute. Okay. Okay. Let me talk about the Trump's, North Korea policy. Okay. This is my topic, my last topic. Okay. I'll finish it in 1 minute. Well, it is reported in the news media that Trump want to have the kind of a direct contact negotiations, direct engagement with North Korea by saying that it is wonderful asset to get along with him, something like that. Okay, so he has kind of the great interest in directly, negotiating with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Okay, but here, there might be one important, the issue related to the Trump's, direct, kind of the transactional approach to, North Korean nuclear, issue. He might aim to mitigate the security threats, okay, while exploring the pragmatic approaches, let me say the transactional approach, okay, such that freezing North Korea's nuclear and missile programs rather than insisting on CVID, because I think Trump and his, the aides understand that Kim Jong-un is not will not give up his nuclear weapons because it is the last resort to the regime survival. So, the CVID is idealistic, but it's not, realistic. So, as the negotiator, as businessman, I think Trump has the possibility to approach this issue in a more pragmatic, realistic way. That is freezing, nuclear, North Korean nuclear, seeking North Korean nuclear, capability rather than, the complete denuclearization. So, however, this approach marks a departure from previous hardline stance. Complete denuclearization reflects the challenges posed by North Korea's advanced nuclear capabilities, okay, and also bolstered by Russian support, okay, which may pose another serious, threat to the security of South Korea, okay. I have more, points to talk about this related to this point, but let me skip this part, okay. So anyway, Trump's North Korea policy will have also very important impacts on RK-US security relations, inter-Korean relations like that. I'm sorry that. Lastly, okay, Trump, finally emphasized that, okay, priority security cooperation is so important to cope with the North Korean nuclear issue, okay, and also the stability, okay, in the peace in the South China Sea and the East China Sea. Okay, Trump administration, okay, agreed that okay, trade security cooperation is important, okay, for U.S. strategic interests and the national interests of both countries. Japan and South Korea. Okay, so however, the Trump's policy, okay, that attempt to strengthen trade security cooperation may read the Japan and South Korea took a more active role in the sensitive issue related to the Taiwan issue and other issue, okay, in their relations with China. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so I have too many contents. I failed to finish my presentation in 15 minutes. I'm very sorry about that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll have an opportunity to maybe get into some of the additional points during the Q&A. This was, of course, a very comprehensive presentation, but maybe just to distill a few points that I heard that we might use for our discussion later on. I think one of the hypotheses you articulated was that the focus of Trump 2.0 will still be on China. I think we might want to discuss that later on. Second one is that there will be a continued focus on the Indo-Pacific strategy. And again, I think we might want to discuss that later on. Third one, I think, was the issue of South Korea being perceived as a free rider and what that all implies. And then the last one is that if South Korea were to pivot toward China, that could mean that the U.S. would drop South Korea as part of the negotiations, potential negotiations with North Korea. But I'd like to now pass on the baton to our next speaker, Professor Vitaly Kozyrev. And do you want to stand here at the podium? Okay, thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much. Before I traveled to Singapore this time from Boston, my friends approached me saying, "Hey, why aren't you going to spend 50 hours on a plane and just traveling to Singapore for 2 days conference?" And I said, "This is my homecoming." So it's a very big privilege for me to be here every time, and I'm very thankful thankful to the leadership of the East Asian Institute, Dr. Schipke, Dr. Lam, Dr. Cheng for like inspirational, all those efforts to, to organize and invite me, have me on board. And this has been a very energizing task for me to participate. So today's my topic is the United States, Russia, and Ukraine, implications for the Korean Peninsula. And I'm just happy also to represent the U.S. academia and to represent the views of the not only just the mainstream of the U.S. academia and the U.S. academics, also some thinkers who also find in today's and Trump 2.0 programs and strategies some rationale. All right, so my outline, very quick, I try to be succinct. So first I'll have a few words about the U.S. leadership strategies, the evolution, kind of general assessment in the 21st century throughout the subsequent administrations from Bush to Trump 2.0 and Russia. And then say a few words about the Ukraine crisis as a byproduct of global power shifts and the fracturing of the world, the Ukraine factor in U.S.-China relations, and just maybe say a few words about the dangers of Cold War 2.0, because lots of people are speaking and discussing this. And also this KIC. KIC is China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. It's a new acronym, challenge, and the bleak prospects of re-engaging Russia. So this is a new kind of very, very kind of fancy acronym. So KIC and reformatting the Eurasian order, key components and implications for East Asia and the Korean Peninsula, and say a few words about the Trump 2.0, the current administration's strategic priorities. All right, so just very briefly, what we have seen is the very kind of thorough attempts by the U.S. administrations to find the ways how to exercise leadership. And so now what we are looking into is the United States, the new administration, as well as the previous administrations, have been guided by a menu of different approaches. And these approaches are represented here, more starting from Ronald Reagan, peace through strength, through George H.W. Bush's New World Order, and throughout the Kissingerian realism, and also the 1992 Pentagon plan to prevent the emergence of a new rival, which was for many observers was like a very interesting observation, a very interesting revelation. Then Clinton's neoliberal internationalism, Obama's leadership from behind, and U.S. claimed the role of a structural power. Structural power is the power which actually set the rules. Trump 1.0 principled realism, where Trump tried to actually re-establish and reinterpret the U.S. national interests after the long period of globalization, and America as being part of the global process. And Biden America's is back, and the revival of neoconservative approaches in terms of, especially in the relationship with Russia and China. Right, so a very brief, basic American foreign policy 100, which is the basic principles of the United States, securing continuity of U.S. foreign policy, which is like U.S. needs to actually exercise its role in every domain. U.S. is an indispensable nation for the world, for the world community, international community. U.S. an example of smart power. U.S. as global public goods provider. U.S. upholds the global normative consensus. U.S. foreign policy is values-driven, and world needs U.S. leadership. These are the fundamental principles which actually are being acknowledged by all administrations, including the current administration. All right, so speaking of the global power shifts in the 21st century, I just laid out a few important changes and how actually the world, part of the world actually responded to the growing opposition, being a growing opposition to global NATO. And I remember I started teaching American foreign policy in 2005, 2006 at Yale and Amherst College. And we already discussed the global NATO, the role of global NATO replacing the United Nations and probably some other international institutions. The emerging powers, which used to be kind of like the secondary powers, but now we're speaking about the power transition from the hegemonic powers to the emerging powers, right? And especially the challenge to this so-called post-sovereign world, which had been related with globalization. Reaction to controversy of neoliberal globalization. We all know about the Washington Consensus and the backlash. The rise of the world without the West, which was the kind of the establishment of some diocese around avoiding the West, right? So, and also the development of the global South with its own agenda and own aspirations. Democracy promotion paradoxically enhanced the axis of authoritarianism. So when we spoke about just like democratic enlargement during the Clinton era or democracy promotion during the George W. Bush era, right, and Obama era, we just all like saw just the result was just the opposite, right? And some devastation in some countries and some strengthening of authoritarianism in other countries. Backlash against Western neocolonialism, so-called, we can discuss this, and also the role of the EU agency or Europe's agency and new great game between US, China, and Russia over Europe. So this is also part of the kind of equation. So Ukrainian war actually turned out to be a side effect of those shifts. Right, so now we speak about the fractured world, we speak about the very concerned about new Cold War as a result. So these are only a few examples. So I just made a few definitions of what Cold War 2.0 looks like. So it's a very interesting situation unfolding actually within the interdependent system, right? The formation of the two isolated poles, it used to be during Cold War 1.0 is impossible, just because of the now there's so much like consolidated apple pie. So it's zero-sum game. It's either me or you. So it cannot be just like shared two big empires by the Soviet Union or by China today and the United States. Third is confrontational stability model. We can discuss this. It actually secured, and it was based on agreement or treaty-based confrontational stability during Cold War 1.0. Now it's impossible. Bipolar construction will be short-lived because it has certain rules and developments, but today is so many chances to actually slide down to the hot war, right? So bipolarity might not work. And also bipolarity is very hard to imagine because we cannot definitely imagine the asymmetric bipolarity between China / like-minded nations and America and its allies. The war will be devastating. We all have seen the devastating outcomes of the war in Ukraine due to the new weapons and new technologies and all the stuff. And this explains why China and Russia accommodate to bipolarization, but by all means, try to prevent it from happening. So just a few words about Ukraine factor. So US administrations had been very consistent in terms of considering Putin as dictator and head of a rogue state, revanchist, imperialist, and so on and so forth, right? So in 2003, I gave a public lecture at Wilmington, Delaware. I was a visiting scholar at University of Delaware, and 2003, I tried to explain the public. There were 200 people there. I tried to explain to the public that actually America should beware of China's challenge, and America should not demonize Putin because Putin is not Russian Mussolini, right? And a few people really just took it like seriously, right? But now what we are looking into is that yes, America is now very concerned about China threat. America is having some very bad consequences of demonizing Putin, who had been very, very adamant. I used to work as a simultaneous translator for many of Putin's lieutenants, right? And I know what they think. I know how they love Europe. I know how they loved Russia, how they loved America, right? And I know how they love Japan and South Korea. So now they're being cornered in the isolated somehow, so kind of like provoked to give a response. So this is another thing. U.S. concerned of potential Russia-Germany relations and condominium, even China-Russia-Germany relationship. Then we had the controversy with how to interpret the European security principles. Brzezinski's idea of Ukraine as a very pivotal factor for Russia's imperial ambitions. West utilized the strong nationalistic traditions in Western Europe, in Western Ukraine. Ukraine positioned as an alternative to Putin's autocracy and challenged Russia's very vision of itself as an empire. And finally, Ukraine actually became a very adversarial to Russia and considering Russia as a very adversarial state. So I don't want to elaborate on the contending discourses and perspectives of the war of Ukraine in Russia and in the West, but you might welcome to ask me for the slides or ask James to send it to you. All right, so during even the Biden administration, there were some discussions about how to take Russia seriously. Should we actually go and should we really push too much? And what are the limits? So that's why Biden had concerns about to what extent America was going to help Ukraine or assist Ukraine. So, but we had also certain figures, such as Tom Graham, very renowned expert on Russia. We had Tulsi Gabbard. We all know about what position she's assuming now. And actually, and also Henry Kissinger was very careful about how to treat with Russia. So only after the outbreak of war in Ukraine, he kind of changed his position, just following the mainstream actually discourse. But actually, he was very concerned about how to rightfully deal with Russia. And also, what is happening is as a result of those policies of the United States, we are seeing a very, very difficult, thorny way to actually reverse the U.S.-Russia relations and to make it happen. So because we have the Kring's challenge, right? We have a couple of quotes discussing those challenges. We have this Russia-China pillar, which is unimaginable to undo or to so whatever Trump is trying to do and his administration is trying to do is re-engage Russia against China, but it's very hard to do, not because of Putin-Xi personal chemistry, but because of the many, many other aspects, systemic, structural aspects, which actually could allow us to think that the decoupling of Russia and China is unimaginable. So what are the China and Russia? They are the pillar of this new construction. So what are they have? What means they have tools they have in hand to actually counterbalance the U.S. leadership? First is the return of the spheres of influence logic. So we have a couple of quotes, like in the statements, just exercising and highlighting this important aspect, right? So this is first. Second, formation of the new ecosystem in Eurasia. So new ecosystem is like, hey, we have to create a sort a la carte international environment where all nations which are unhappy about the dictatorship from the West, they just are welcome to join. And just we have a discussion. They have their own opinion. They have this own civilizational uniqueness. So, but they're all welcome. And many countries, and you have seen how the BRICS is been expanding, and how new initiatives are being receiving support including such countries like India. So that is something which is enables these countries to exercise flexibility and situational response, as Fyodor Lukyanov, one of the Moscow pundits, used to say. New executive exclusive security model in Eurasia, which is which represents the evolution from the Xi Jinping's 2014 Asia for the Asians idea to Eurasia for the Eurasians, right? So, and this is very similar to actually Xi Jinping's global security initiative. And these are some quotes speaking about or describing this new Eurasian security architecture, which challenge and question the validity of the Euro-Atlantic security, including the Asia-Pacific security with the US at the center. A battle for the global South, so that has been already part of the initiatives and movements initiated by China, Russia, and KRINCs, right? So to actually engage in the global South, these are the important points, which I'm not going to read, right? And also strengthening the nodes of a new architecture. So the first node was this treaty between Putin and Kim, June 19, 2024, which is very important. And this is important. Dismissing the problem of denuclearization, engaging Pyongyang into economic cooperation, enhancing the new formula of complementary deterrence. You can talk about this, you can ask questions about this in the region, benefiting from the vague character of the new Russia-China-North Korea axis and preserving room for an upgrade. As for the United States, United States has been benefiting from the strategic ambiguity in terms of the China-Taiwan and Taiwan issue, right? So now China, Russia, and North Korea are having a strategic ambiguity. They can enhance their alliance or they can just weaken their alliance. So that enables them to say that, yes, our relationship is actually better than an alliance, right? So alliance is too rigid, right? This is pretty fluid, but we can make it stronger. We can make it like, we can dissipate it for the time being. Okay. Then Iranian-Russian treaty recently signed with Iran. It's a different treaty is different from the one with North Korea, but it's also important. Moscow special relations with Belarus and nuclearization of Belarus, and attempts to engage India as a key partner and new trends in the ASEAN-BRICS relationship. You all heard about Indonesia's actually appeal and becoming part of BRICS. All right, so finally, about Trump. So Trump, during 1.0, already formulated his important principle, which is we don't need to spend money to spread American values. We need to spend money to actually secure and actually convince the partners on America's value. And that is the important point in Trump point 1. Trump point 2.0, very important. Like I'm elaborating on driven from Keith Kellogg's actually publications mostly, right? So which is absolutely different and opposing the Biden administration's actually posture toward Ukraine and Russia. So these are important quotes from including Keith Kellogg and including Mike Waltz views. Speaking about ending the war will allow the U.S. to undermine solidarity between the axes. So the biggest concern is that this crinks, right? So to what extent actually they are already deep in their relationship and their rapprochement, and what we are supposed to do about this, right? So what is the new approach? Is like, yes, China dangers, as previous speakers were saying, China dangers is existential. That is true, because China is very much more organized, and China has a credible capacity in terms of production, in terms of organization, and even deterrence. America First was aimed at preventing a war. That is the principle. Protracted wars only strengthens the axis, right? That's why America is like paying efforts now to actually stop this war, right? It's crucial now to disband the axis and weaken the China-Russia ties. Is it possible? Putin solidifying alliance with China DPRK because he needs the new North Korea armament is not enough. What I'm trying to say is that North Korea is part of the broader plan by Russia and China. So that it's not just only like Russia is missing their shells, and that's why they're receiving 1 million shells from North Korea. In terms of re-engaging Russia, these are all examples how the new administration's leading actually officials are speaking absolutely in favor of Russia. So they're speaking about how they reinterpreted the war of Ukraine, and they tried to actually do something. The goal is to re-engage Russia. So trying to re-engage Russia. So the key question is, okay, so first, Russia-China quasi-alliance is very systemic. It's not just like today, they're swing state. Russia is no longer a swing state. America could re-engage Russia in 2007, right? Easily, all right? Now it's very hard to re-engage Russia in terms of making Russia a swing state. New reality, we all speak about fighting against Western domination, driven by the many aspects, interests, ideologies, narratives, shared norms and values, and very much related to the domestic concerns and domestic legitimacy issues, right? Responding to the Western narratives of global NATO, I'll talk about this. Russia-China building condominium. China asserts its global position, leadership roles, and generates structural impulses. Russia seems to be accommodative to those impulses. To understand Russia's actions, one should carefully read Chinese concepts. Okay? Implications for the U.S. Russia DPRK alliance. Russia-North Korea alignment is not an ad hoc response to U.S. actions. It's a long game aimed at eventual nullification of Washington's extended deterrence efforts. This creates incentives for regional actors to reconsider their staunch commitment to strengthen ties with the U.S. and put themselves in a position of dependency from U.S. security umbrella, bearing the risk of being involved into conflict with China or Russia, now exchanged by or enhanced by unpredictable North Korea. Right? So Putin's Sea master plan to alternate the U.S.-centered alliance system with their universal Eurasian security architecture might sideline the U.S. in the process of regional engagement, especially if Russia and China demonstrate their ability to improve defensive capabilities and productive synergy, and their readiness to strike deals with regional communities. And U.S. needs to really thoroughly and adequately analyze the limitations of the mutual military assistance with the framework of the pact. So I have a couple of thoughts, a couple of implications for East Asia, just only one, right? And that will be last slide, which is like the free of charge, right? U.S. strategy of the double containment and the protracted conflicts has indeed enhanced Beijing-Moscow partnership, prompted them to reformat Eurasian security architecture and align in the key global regions, including Asia, in the Asia-Pacific or in the Pacific. Russia and China is setting the foundation of a new condominium in Eurasia. The cumulative effects of the formation of CRINCS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, shake the U.S. positions among Indo-Pacific nations. By formally replacing China as a primary security provider for DPRK, Russia reduces U.S. use of the North Korea nuclear issue as a leverage against China. This might ask the questions about this. DPRK has increased its role in Eurasian affairs, becoming a factor in East Asia politics, right? So it's much more important and much more established. So Lyle Goldstein and myself published in the North Korea Review Journal an article about the paradox of bipolarity. So in this case, this alignment between China, Russia, and North Korea might be having a positive impact on the security situation and on the Korean Peninsula. So China had to revise its defense planning, anticipating direct confrontation with the U.S. and its allies, including over Taiwan. So yes, I have one more implications for the Korean Peninsula. And foreign policy concerns and recommendations, right? So these are, okay, let me just 30 seconds, all right? While pursuing its belligerent strategies, Kim regime has obtained confidence vis-a-vis the US, so war norms degradation, which actually Samir Puri, I think, mentioned in the East Asia Review journal at East Asian Institute, has not resulted in a hot war so far, right? Because everybody expected Kim like starting war after he signed a treaty with Russia. It hasn't happened. Pyongyang stimulated its defense production, enhancing defense capabilities, receiving new technologies, and becoming integrated into the CRINCS integrated production chains. Seoul has not gone nuclear yet. There has been a heated debate about nuclearization of South Korea, jointly with the US. By appointing George Zinoviev as ambassador of Russia to Korea, Moscow sends a signal to demonstrate interest in re-engaging South Korea, right? By leaving the door open for US allies to join the new security architecture, Moscow and Beijing are messaging Seoul and Tokyo about alternative options to maintain stability. The US relations with North Korea might also be a matter of Trump-Putin trade-off discussion in the near future. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think at the very beginning I said we should take this event as an opportunity to come up with bold new ideas, and I think we have heard a few, and I'm sure we'll have a lively discussion in a second. Now the next speaker will join us. It has been pre-recorded, and Victor Cha is going to present his views.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here at the 6th KIC-EAI Conference on Korea, hosted by the Korea Center at NUS, my good friend, Professor Penger Lam, as well as the Institute for International Studies at Kyung University, with my good friend, also Dean and Professor Hahnkyu. It's really a pleasure to be with you. I am sorry that I cannot be with you in person for this wonderful conference and very important conference. I'm asked today to give some initial remarks on the new administration in Washington, D.C. as it relates to the Korean Peninsula. I'm happy to do that. I'll start off by saying overall that I think that the team that they are assembling, and it's still a work in progress, the team that they are assembling have good Asia expertise on them. If I think about some of the key high-level policy positions at the Defense Department, at the State Department, and in the White House, there are people there that are staffing those positions that are bona fide Indo-Pacific/Asia experts, and many of them with quite a good deal of experience on Korea. So in that respect, I think things are off to a good start in terms of the expertise in the administration. Of course, the variable is President Trump himself and the things that he might declare on his own, which policymakers will then have to somehow keep a pace of. But today, in talking about the future of U.S. policy, and again, as I said, it's a work in progress, and we don't have clearly outlined policies, that one of the most important barometers, I think, of this administration and their policy towards East Asia will be the position that the administration takes on the U.S.-Korea relationship, the U.S.-Japan relationship, and in particular, the trilateral relationship among the three countries, the so-called Camp David trilateral that was achieved by the Biden administration in August of 2023. So in thinking about the future, because it's hard to make accurate predictions, particularly about the future, let me talk a little bit about how I see the past and the future of this trilateral relationship and how it is actually critical and core to the U.S. Position in the Indo-Pacific, particularly in East Asia and in Northeast Asia. So as many of you know, historically, these have been the two key democratic allies of the United States in Asia, although there was always a scratchy relationship between the two of them for reasons well known to this audience. From a U.S. perspective, they were always treated as a single strategic unit. The dilemma of trilateralism for the United States was, of course, you had two allies in Washington, in Seoul and Tokyo, that had shared values, shared threats, but little cohesion because of historical animosities, and also because of change in the domestic political scene in South Korea between conservative and progressive governments, which would in one way or another also filter down to the relationship between Korea and Japan and the trilateral relationship as well. So the United States has always been in a position, a very labor-intensive position, of constantly trying to manufacture, to engineer, to keep the two allies close at certain points in history, and also to prevent them from completely going off the rails in other points in history. I think it's fair to say that we had a historic low point in the relationship in the beginning of 2022, where we had a failed comfort woman agreement between Korea and Japan, trade sanctions that both countries were putting on each other, the danger of a trilateral intelligence sharing agreement falling apart, hostile encounters by the two militaries at sea and in the air, no diplomatic dialogue taking place between the two sides, and Japan moving ahead with a host of plurilateral and multilateral efforts among the democracies in Asia, things like the Quad, AUKUS, and other things in which Korea was opting out, was not a participant in, and overall concerns about a decoupling of the Korean and the Japan theaters by both Tokyo and Seoul. But from about mid-2002, we see a dramatic turnaround. In June of 2022, on the occasion of the first meeting of the NATO summit leaders in Madrid that had an Asia component, the Asia-Pacific Four, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. On the occasion of that meeting, we saw on the sidelines the first trilateral summit meeting between the US, Japan, and Korea, certainly on the sidelines of NATO, and the first trilateral summit meeting in 5 years among the three countries. The next month, we saw Foreign Minister Pak Jin go to Japan, the first visit in 3 years. And then in August of 2022, we saw trilateral missile defense exercises taking place in Hawaii, the first in 5 years. A very important point, I think, in all of this was the August 15th Liberation Day speech by South Korea, in which they tried to consciously rewrite the narrative of Japan using what is traditionally an anti-Japan celebration to change the narrative and to talk about Japan as a partner in terms of democracy and universal values. After that, we saw a growth in trilateral dialogue on economic security, whether this was part of the CHIPS 4 alliance that also included Taiwan, or whether it was part of trilateral economic security dialogues that were taking place in Hawaii in February of 2023. And then we see big events in the spring and summer of 2023. President Yoon, first summit meeting in Japan by South Korean president in a dozen years. In July of 2023, Japan returned South Korea to the whitelist, and then in August of 2023, the Camp David summit. And there were many things that were important in that summit, but the most significant was the commitment to consult in the event of a common threat. This was the closest thing that the three allies have come to a collective defense declaration. We hosted Kurt Campbell at CSIS at the end of the Biden administration. In a retrospective, I asked him what was the high point of his 4 years working on Asia and the US government, and without blinking an eye, he said it was Camp David. Among the many other accomplishments of the Biden administration, he said it was Camp David. Since then, we saw 70+ meetings that took place among the three allies, high level, on everything from deterrence and maritime security to air drills, anti-submarine warfare, next generation, gender and security. And then, of course, in November of 2024, we saw the establishment of a trilateral secretariat. So this is a major turnaround in the relationship, and one has to ask, what were the causes behind this? And very briefly, I would say there were 5. The first of these was, of course, the uncertainty in the external environment created by the war in Europe and the war in the Middle East. Even though these were far and away from Asia, these were messages that said the unpredictable or the unthinkable can happen. And they can also happen in Asia. And this created an environment in which actors tried to make their security environments more predictable, in part by drawing closer together. Second, of course, was China's assertiveness in the Taiwan Straits, in the East China Sea, in the South China Sea. North Korea, of course, their runaway nuclear program, the absence of diplomacy, and then more recently, the growth of relations with Russia. At the time in 2022 and 23, US politics was also an important causal variable, the uncertainty of our elections. And then, of course, fifth, in terms of domestic politics, was domestic political leadership on all sides, Biden, President Yoon, and Prime Minister Kishida. In terms of the future and how and whether the Trump administration will continue on this path, again, we're all just hazarding guesses. But an important signal was certainly sent by the summit meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Kishida, where there was specific mention of continuing the trilateral relationship. In addition to that, I think that many of the Trump administration see the trilateral efforts that were undertaken by the Biden administration as originating in the first Trump administration, so they feel partial ownership of the idea. But in addition to those factors, the external causal variables are still there. The external threats are still present in terms of wars in Europe, and in particular, the growth of the China, DPRK, Russia, Iran, the axis of autocracies, pose important external threats that should try to bring the allies closer together. At the same time as the positive variables for a continuation of the policies towards the Korea-Japan, there are also negative variables, and I'll list them very quickly. The first is that there are leadership problems on all sides. Trump, as we said, is fundamentally unpredictable, despite what he says. In Japan, even though Ishiba is very supportive of trilateral relations, he has a very weak government. He has a weak domestic political base, and snap elections could be called there at any particular time. And of course, in South Korea, we have a major leadership problem in the sense that the domestic political crisis remains unresolved. There is a weak or really non-existent government in Korea today, I'm sorry to say, and that probably won't be for months till we see a conclusion to that. So all of these things really make it very difficult for political leadership to press forward with this. In fact, the three leaders that created the August Camp David trilateral are not in place, and that is a factor that is very important. What can be done going forward? I think there is very little that the South Korean government can do at this point without a new government in place until the summer at earliest. So I don't expect that there would be any summit meetings of that nature. But it will be very important for the government of Japan to continue to advocate for trilateral relations, continuing those as well as bilateral relations. The business communities in all three countries play an important role. They are all in favor of better Japan-Korea relations and also in favor of trilateral relations. And particularly because the president in the United States is a businessman by nature. He's not a politician. He has many contacts with the business communities, not just in the United States, but in Japan and Korea. And so they probably play a more outsized role than they did before. The three militaries also and military leaders also play a very important role in impressing upon the leadership, particularly in Washington, about the importance and the threats posed to the three countries. And I think it's really important that the government of Japan also ensure and send the message that any change in the troop presence on the Korean Peninsula or any uncertain deals or negotiations or diplomacy with North Korea is not in the interest of the United States, Japan, or South Korea. As I said, it's unclear when we'll have a government in South Korea. This is a trilateral relationship in which you have two legs of the stool and are really absent the third leg, probably not until the summer, which will make this a very uncertain situation, both on the trade side as well as the security side. I was asked to speak for only 15 minutes, and I think I have used up all of my time. To sum up, I think that, as I said, there are very good signs that the new administration is staffing up in key decision-making positions, not just within the Asia portfolio, but at a higher level, whether we're talking about the National Security Council or at the State Department or at the Defense Department, with people who are bona fide Asia experts. Not that they can spend all their time working on Asia, but bona fide Asia experts who have had a lot of experience on Korea, Japan, and China. And so that's a very good sign. There are positive signals that a very important part of what the Biden administration achieved in Asia could be continued in the Trump administration. And there are external factors like the threats posed by Russia, DPRK, China, and Iran that push the three allies together. But at the same time, there is great uncertainty in terms of the domestic leadership variable, and we cannot discount that as well. And so going forward, I think we need to keep track of these particular variables and the signals that are coming out from a Trump administration that up until this point has focused a lot of the initial actions by the president, executive orders, legislation on domestic issues, but clearly are now pivoting towards foreign policy issues, as we've seen with the summit meetings with Israel, with Japan, and more to come. So with that, Chair, Professor Schipke, I'll turn it back to you, and I look forward to hearing the comments of the others on the panel. And thank you again for inviting me to participate in the 6th conference between the KIC and EAI. Thank you again very much.
Thank you very much. Maybe just one key message I heard was that the bad news is we have a very unpredictable new president on the one hand and relatively weak leadership in Japan and in Korea, and that creates, of course, an environment for uncertainty. But we have enough time for Q&As now. If I could ask the panelists to join me here. If you could just identify yourself, name and affiliation, and if you want to direct the question to one particular person, please do so. Okay, we'll give it a try. First row.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth. I'm a freelance, but I'm speaking in my personal capacity. Thank you very much to the EAI for convening this conference on a very significant day. So tomorrow is actually Singapore's Total Defense Day, and specifically on the morning of 14th of February 1942, a medical student was fatally injured by shelling on duty at Tan Tock Seng Hospital. So on this very day, on the 14th, and the evening itself, 11 students was also fatally injured when they tried to attend his funeral. Now, the significance of this is because Korea is now having a student boycott and a professional boycott of the medical school. And on the 6th of February, the 65th Military Brigade actually had a convention with the Korean Army, ROK Army, on exchanging medical capabilities. I was just wondering, how do you resolve the student boycotts and student and medical professionals boycott? Because now the military doctors are being deployed to cover them. So just want to know if any of you are willing to address this issue.
I didn't really know about that incident in Korea. Maybe, yeah. Okay.
Has the government tried to deploy military personnel to the civilian hospitals, but actually didn't go as planned? So I don't think the current government is imposing that policy.
I'm sorry, I didn't know about that incident in details, but you know, yes, Korea is now facing a very critical domestic political, leadership. Okay, due to the Yoon's impeachment of President Yoon. However, unlike the what is from outsiders, I think Korean people have successfully managed, okay, their democratic procedure to recover democracies. I think what I mean is the Korea has successfully so far, okay, attempt to recover its democracy based upon, the constitutional procedures and rule of law. Okay, so even though there is a political crisis, important political crisis in the Korean society, however, it's not that violent or the violent. Okay, as you may think. Okay, so okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I think I'm trying to sort of pick the gist of the question, which was about use of the military, right? Against the doctors. Because you were referring to an incident in Singapore in the 40s, correct? You were basically sort of using that as an example to draw parallels to what's going on in Seoul or in Korea.
Can we use the microphones because otherwise it's difficult for others to hear? Yeah, if you could press the button.
No, the significance to Singapore is because on this very day itself in 1942, that's what happened to the medical students within this university. So I'm just saying, because now the student boycotts, military doctors, as far as I know, have been deployed to civilian hospitals. So does that, so the students are not actively participating in their studies as well as taking up medical education. So how are you going to, in future, build a good medical profession?
I think, I mean, I'm not Korean, I'm Japanese. But I'm actually wanted to say something in support of what Professor Park and also Professor Kim was also talking about the political crisis in Korea, and also some cases that seems to be about whether democracy, because Korea has a history of violent demonstrations. So what I wanted to basically raise is that the question that you're asking, is it about a much more of a longer systemic change of medical issues, or something that relates to the right of, the civilian realm of student protest and so on? Because I wasn't quite sure.
Advice that there's no serious vacuum of medical supply at this moment in Korea. Yes, there is a certain degree of concern about the enough supply of medical manpower and facilities, since due to the continued boycott by the medical school students. But Korean government is firstly trying to conclude their negotiation with the Medical Student Association. At the same time, the medical professors and medical like experts, they are making up for the vacuum coming out of the long-lasting student demonstration. So actually, there is no serious vacuum of medical supply coming out of the very student boycott. So I can see many foreigners are coming to Korea to enjoy what we call medical tourism. So I don't think you have to worry about that too much. And we can continue after this. We can continue our conversation if you want after this.
Thank you very much. I think what was confusing for some is that you used a reference from Singapore that maybe some people are not familiar with, and then referred it to Korea. But it's a very important point. And as you indicated, you might also be willing to discuss further bilaterally. Yes, next question.
So I'm Yulin Yang from Saobaoji. We're in the shipping business. So Korea, a lot of industrial capacity. U.S. shipbuilding's gone way down. China, I think, is 230 times U.S. shipbuilding capacity today. So I've heard talk in the maritime industry about Korea being part of that, to help the U.S. out. So I guess my question is the U.S. going to factor in that, hey, Korea can actually help U.S. out a lot because U.S. can't fully reindustrialize by itself?
I think the cooperation, bilateral cooperation between U.S. and South Korea in MRO of the U.S. vessels is very important. First of all, the Trump, when he talked to the acting president, Choi, okay, he, talked that he needs some, cooperation from South Korean shipbuilding for the MRO of the U.S. military vessels. So I think it is good for both countries to cooperate with each other on this, the MRO, because it would help the United States strengthen its naval the projection, the power, okay, in Indo-Pacific region, and then maybe Trump also demands to increase the share of the defense sharing with South Korea, right? So I think South Korea may contribute to this cost of the MRO that is in South Korean shipyards, so that that might meet the Trump's demands for increase in defense sharing cost.
Thank you. Yes, maybe we'll start out here first, and then.
Hi, I'm Louis Kyung. I'm from Public Policy Asia Advisor. I had some experience working in the ASEAN headquarters in Jakarta several years ago. And basically Japan, Korea, I think the US, great supporters in terms of development prospects in the region. I was just wondering, with the new Trump administration suspending, some of this development aid, for example, the suspension of US aid, and also the retreat into economic nationalism as a result of his tariffs-centered policies to pressure allies into reducing their trade deficits and also equalizing maybe, political security expenses and all that. How would the development support, how would the development support may be affected for the region such as ASEAN? And how could ASEAN engage with the US, Japan, and Korea to ensure that this important collaboration, economic collaboration, could be sustained, at least for the medium term?
Basically is who is replacing the US if aid is not forthcoming, for example.
Yes, my belief is that US is, because there's a new team and Trump has invited Elon Musk to optimize the government. So I believe that this has been a kind of, a domestic, I would say, faction struggle for the much more transparency in terms of funding. And I believe that the USAID is not gone yet. And will be somehow revamped. And also experts are saying that will be part of the State Department functions. Sometimes the problem is with State Department is that sometimes the State Department itself acknowledges that Department of Treasury might be better in terms of distributing funds, because remember originally the sanctions against North Korea, Iran, and Russia had been under the control of State Department during Trump 1.0 administration, right? So, and the State Department was, if not efficient enough, and then they transferred this sanctioning business to Department of Treasury, and it became very efficient. So the sanctions really worked, right? And so now I think that there will be some sort of revamping and reorganizing, rejuvenating this US aid. I don't think there will be a withdrawal.
Thank you. Yeah, you.
Thank you, Director. My name is Yu Hong with the East Asian Institute. I have questions for Professor Park. Very nice to see you again. President Trump mentioned the Republic of Korea as a money machine during his campaign rally last October. I believe you already mentioned this one. He asked, basically he described Republic of Korea as a free rider for this U.S. Korea alliance. Do you agree with this assessment? Do you think Korea is actually a free rider for this this military alliance? Should Korea do more in terms of strengthening its own security, as well as the general security in the Korean Peninsula? Thank you.
So anything you could say now can be held against you.
I don't think Korea is free rider on alliance with the United States, because Korea already pays a good enough money to the cost of US stationed in South Korea. Okay, but the issue here is that Trump is not satisfied with the cost. The paid by South Korea now. So with regard to that, definitely President Trump will, call South Korea to increase, okay, their defense sharing burden. Okay, I don't think there is any the possible. I think South Korea has no choice but to meet some degree of the Trump's demands by increasing some portion of its costs, the defense sharing costs. However, I think it is very important for South Korea, to persuade Trump that South Korea is already pay a good enough money, okay, to the cost of the US troops in South Korea, because Kyung area, there's the largest American overseas military camp in the world. South Korea paid all the money for the construction of that military camps, and then But however, the Korea can reduce, the terms, dissatisfaction about the South Koreans, the contribution to the costs, by, importing, directly the advanced, expensive US weapons like that. And I said, and also paid some, money for the cost of the RMO in South Korean, shipbuildings. Okay, something like that. So anyway, Korea cannot, increase its the cost, the military cost sharing up to 10 billion is too much. Even though, I heard that the U.S. forces in Korea is now unable to pay, to spend all the money now paid by the Korean government. Okay, in other words, the U.S. forces Korea already received the enough money from the Korea, but Korea can also contribute more to the cost of the U.S. forces in Asia through the methods that I just mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, did you?
One word. Yes, I believe that same attitude toward Korea and Japan, similar we can compare with NATO. So some people speculating about America might be withdrawing from NATO. It will never happen, just for many reasons. And also there is a very good understanding in the White House that we all have seen the importance of the European integration, the European community, and the ways of actually sponsored and triggered and stimulated by the United States. Even when the European community actually and NATO were at the brink of collapse or weakening, America came to rescue. So it will be happening same in terms of U.S.-Korea relations and U.S.-Japan relations. And if we look at the economic relationship between U.S. and Korea, we half of the cars which I'm seeing in the United States are made in Korea, Hyundai, Kia. So and Americans love it. So a lot of opportunities for Trump to convince the Korean administration and also the big businesses to actually contribute and probably support this alliance.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Chu. I'm a faculty at the Public Policy School. My question is about democracy and the implications of that on how South Korea interacts with the United States. The United States, quality of democracy has declined, and people observe sort of rapid erosion in checks and balances in the U.S. How does that affect how South Korea does business or interact with the United States when, at least in rhetoric, shared democracy has been such a bedrock of its relationship? Thank you.
Let me just clarify the Western, including American, perception of democracy. American democracy is called liberal democracy, and liberal democracy is based on the very nuanced balance between the free elections and democratic principles and institutions, and also the rule of law, right? Because whatever America has been trying to implement and engage other countries into the democratization process, including Russia, for example, and Ukraine. The Russians and Ukrainians had developed some sort of democracies, but these democracies ended up being democratic authoritarianisms, or authoritarian or democratic or authoritarian democracies, and they failed most of the time because of the lack of the rule of law in institutions. So this is important. If you look at the Fareed Zakaria's article, 1997, about the rise of illiberal democracy, right, where he described the foundations of this, the important combination of the rule of law institutions and democratic principles. And we all agree that, including in debates with China, that when China speaks about democracy, so China speaks about democracy as the mostly as a very nuanced relationship between the state and the society, right? Where the state makes some commitments in terms of provision of public goods, right? And the public population is trying to hold the state accountable. So when we speak about democracy, we also speak about consociational democracy in China. So we have some nuanced aspects of democracy, democratization process and democracy in South Korea. Right? But South Korea is learning a lot from America, and also South Korea could be learning a lot from this Trump revolution, which is trying to restore the rule of law. Right, first, not even about democracy, because democracy in many countries is becoming already kind of the result of the legitimacy deficit. If you look at the European Union, you look at the other Western countries, there's a lot of problems with the legitimacy deficit. So now many countries are speaking about democracy as democracy or meritocracy, right, including in South Korea and America, right? So to what extent should be like the institutions and should be developed and political life should be developed based on democratic principles, or should be developed on some sort of meritocratic principles? And also the rule of law. And the rule of law could enable those new systems and evolving systems to actually check and balance.
Let me say this about the Korean democracy. There are two phases of Korea's transition to democracy. The first stage is democratization. The second stage is consolidation. Okay, as you may know, the democratization process that happened in the 70s, 80s look somewhat violent. Sometimes, you know, a big fight between the students and the police, you know, riot policemen and something like that, like a Gangji incident in 1980. But after, you know, democratization in 1987, since then, you know, Korean democracy has been consolidated very much, okay, for last 40 years. So I believe that after successful consolidation of the Korean democracy, the democratic institution is very, I think, viable and resilient and sustainable. So even though we have, but I don't mean that we have the perfect democracy in Korea. There is such much room to improve, but I believe it is very resilient. Okay, even though it is, I mean, experience is some crisis now, political crisis, but I think Korean democracy will be bounced back again, okay, successfully. That's my belief on Korean democracy.
Thank you very much. I think what we could do is we'll take maybe 3 questions at a time, and then you could maybe answer them together. Maybe we'll start with you.
Hi, Su Ming from the Straits Times. Everyone is watching Mr. Trump's meeting with Mr. Putin next week. North Korea has been a key beneficiary of the war in Ukraine. So what do you make of the chance that North Korea would get ditched in some shape or form by Russia? My second question is, South Korea is also watching the meeting quite closely because there are fears that Ukraine will get sidelined by the US and what that means for US foreign policy towards Asia. What do you make of fears that South Korea might get abandoned, reading the tea leaves from next week's meeting? What do you make of these two thoughts? Thank you.
Want to take maybe
Clarify your question about when you said Trump and Putin will meet. So what will happen to North Korea? Because I didn't understand.
So Putin and Trump are meeting ostensibly to cut a deal to end the war in Ukraine in some shape or form.
Okay.
North Korea has been a key beneficiary because it supplied Russia with ammunition and people. There's a sense that the talks between Trump and Putin could mean something for North Korea's involvement. What do you think are the chances that North Korea will get ditched by Russia?
Thank you. Chia.
Hi, I'm Chia Hao from the East Asian Institute. So this is a question about China-Russia relations. So China and Russia, in my opinion, are not natural allies. And in fact, they actually had a past history of distrust. There's also competition over influence over Central Asia or control over the Arctic shipping routes, and even the influence over North Korea. So it seems that they're more united by the distrust of the United States rather than a system of common values, you know, or perhaps common strategic interests beyond outside of the US. So how enduring is this China-Russia relationship? And because you were mentioning that they could provide some leadership to the Eurasia bloc, if this relationship is not based on, common values or strategic concerns, then I don't think you'll be very successful in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, yeah, we had one more. Can take one more question. Yes, last row.
Hi, my name is Chiri, and I'm from Channel News Asia's East Asia Tonight. Actually, Chi Hao asked my question. I was going to ask you to elaborate on what you mentioned earlier as the condo that yes, the China-Eurasia condo over Eurasia. Could you just elaborate on that and what that means? Because this month will be the 3rd anniversary of the Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, and what does that mean for Ukraine?
Thank you. And I might add one question myself for this round, and I think that's more directed to you. I was very surprised that you are of the view that Trump 2.0 continues to focus mostly on China and what that all means. If you look at all the communications, including the speech that he gave at Davos, where he went on for 15 minutes, China was mentioned once and only in passing, and it was about Europe. It was all about what we would call the Western Alliance. So it almost seems, from my point of view, that compared to Trump 1.0, Trump 2.0 might not really be as much focused on China. So with that, maybe who wants to go first?
Thank you. All right, so let me start with the last Dr. Schipke's question. Yeah, I believe that it's like Chinese are saying 醉翁之意不在酒. So when Trump is not saying or not mentioning China, it doesn't mean that he doesn't mean he's like the U.S.-China confrontation, U.S.-China big rivalry today, right? So whatever Trump has been doing, like in terms of Panama, in terms of Greenland, and also in some other Middle East, like having a second background is like he just like goes and strikes and just like trying to do something, especially in the areas where Chinese presence is significant. So I'm not saying that just like there is a direct challenge now of China, because now he understands, compared with Trump, previous Trump administration, that he needs to be more careful and more nuanced with China. So like you not just like use the fighting without rules, MMA style, to fight China, because it's very hard to compete China and like outbeat China, given Chinese potential, China's like influence in the world, all right, and China's capability to actually find some counteractions. So I believe that this is the inherent agenda of the Trump 2.0 administration. And many things, including that's what I was trying to deliver, including the new re-engagement of Russia. I'm not sure that it will be successful, because Russians have a lot of resentment, a lot of mistrust toward the US and any administration. So I don't think that will happen, especially given the very complex position of the Russian Putin's administration vis-a-vis its own society, which is becoming more patriotic and more nationalistic now. So he himself has been witnessing the transformation of Russia. So he cannot just like go back and swing back to being a very good friend of the United States, right? So and that is one of the big issues. So I think that Trump 2.0 will still have, and we will all see all the quotes from his leading the officials from his administration, that it's all about China. So this is the first thing. Second is, will China and Russia relations sustain or be sustainable? Yeah, just I agree with the assumption that the alliance or rapprochement between China and Russia, especially after the 2011, the 2011 was the two things happened. One thing was the Arab Spring, when actually China and Russia both were neutral, like abstained at the United Nations Security Council resolution on Libya, flying the free zone or whatever, the free zone in Libya, right? So there was an attempt to actually flatter and reestablish or improve relations with the West. And then the West utilized this no-flight zone to actually push NATO and destroy the Gaddafi regime. And after this, some of the U.S. administration figures were saying that, okay, like John McCain, for example, saying, oh, Putin is the next Gaddafi. So that's one thing. And then the second thing was Bolotnaya protests. So it was an attempt, 2011, to set up and instigate the color revolution in Russia against Putin. And that was the red line for Putin as well. So, and then same situation happened to China. So China had been working very hard, even until now, to actually find some common ground with America, right? So that's Chinese, I invite sometimes experts from China, like leading experts on US-China relations they speak at Harvard, speak at my college, and they all are very much, you know, especially in this institution, they have so many guests from China. They're very much frustrated of their efforts to invest into betterment of US-China relations, and then it doesn't work. Maybe they hope that with this administration, because Trump is becoming more and more inclined to striking more deals with China, so there might be kind of a consensus, especially if China joins, and China already is probably open to this, some sort of nuclear arms reduction or disarmament agreements or negotiations between Russia, United States, and China. So that might be good factor. And second thing is like probably China, United States, and Russia could sit at the same table to speak about the Arctic. So there will be another actual opportunity to actually reestablish the relationship. So I don't think that now it's driven by the opposition against the United States and United States policies, especially the post-sovereign world situation when the United States try to exercise the so-called geopolitical intervention into these countries. That's why no wonder China and Russia speak so much about sovereignty. So the sovereignty, very important. So if America tomorrow says that, okay, we acknowledge, and it looks like America is trying to say this, we acknowledge any nation's right, Marco Rubio said, any nation's right to exercise their own national interests, right? So that means to say that each nation has certain, rights to pursue sovereignty on their territory. So this is a big deal, especially in the future negotiations about the future normative consensus and maybe the revamped United Nations, right? Because the principles and norms of United Nations are being very questioned by the recent developments, starting with bombing Yugoslavia and the interference and the decision on the Kosovo, 2005, and then the other situations with Iraq, with Libya, with Syria, right? So we are now having a very important milestone, which is like probably in the new Yalta, probably will be new Yalta. And of course, there is a problem with European Union, because European actually officials are very much now opposing the New Yalta. And remember Annalena Baerbock was saying that, oh, it will be either New Yalta or Helsinki. So what actually Russia prefers. And we Europeans prefer Helsinki, not New Yalta. Well, that is the big, now very important structural question which actually everybody is facing. So yes, there will be some foundation for future coordination between Russia and China. Of course, there is an asymmetric partnership, but they have lots of drivers to actually get along, develop certain agenda, and of course, now I all have seen that despite all criticism and all like backlash against China, China has been very adamant in terms of supporting Russia in its war with Ukraine. And the first next question, which is the China support Russia and the China-Russia condominium. China has been supportive of Russia in this case for two reasons. One is that because Russia has challenged the American US-led security architecture. So US-led security architecture was based on the country's free choice to choose their form to protect their own security, which was a part of the OSCE document 1997. But at the same time, Russia's took a second part of this provision in this document, which is indivisibility of security. So China actually is upholding this indivisibility of security principle, and understanding and sharing Russia's concerns about the free choice principle, which actually justified the expansion of NATO. And the final question is, would North Korea be ditched? That was the message of my presentation, which is, it is a structural, a very a kind of systemic project to engage North Korea as part of the new security architecture. So North Korea will not be ditched. A short answer.
Thank you very much. Final answers from you.
Okay. Let me make my answer as short as possible. To your question, I don't think the main goal of the Trump's China policy has changed or softened again, because Trump now didn't say much about the China. Okay, however, during their first term, Trump used kind of hardline policy, right, toward China by pressing or decoupling, something like that. But I think Trump now understand that that kind of the hardline policy also hurt American economy, the interest of American people. So during the second term, I don't think the main goal has not changed. However, Trump may be the reason why he did, refraining himself from, pressing China too much, is that maybe he want to open some space for negotiation to achieve his goals like that. Okay, first talk, later he will decide what he did. Okay, that is my opinion. Second question about the sidelining of South Korea in the case of direct negotiation between North Korea and United States. I also was a little bit surprised when Trump directly talked to Putin in negotiation in process to end the Ukraine, the Russian war. I was quite surprised. So there is some worry in South Korean society that if Trump want to talk to the Kim Jong-un directly, okay, the direct engagement the Kim Jong-un, okay, to strike a nuclear deal, maybe there is possibility that as you can see in the case of the Ukraine case, Trump may bypass or sideline South Korea, okay, in nuclear deal with North Korea. But the result of the direct nuclear deal between Kim and Trump may hurt South Korea's security, even though they agree upon not denuclearization, but on freeze or North Korean nuclear capability. It actually pose a great threat to the security of South Korea. So maybe in that case, there are some worries that South Korea might be sidelined or bypassed by the Trump, okay, in his attempt to directly negotiate with Kim. So that's why it is very important for South Korean government to coordinate Washington very closely, okay, about the North Korean nuclear issue, even though it has political crisis now in Korea. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We've come to the end of this panel. Of course, some of the discussion will continue throughout the day. Please join me in giving a big hand to our participants, of course, also online. Thank you very much. Over to Yun-Sin.